Calculate 2 plus 11i divided by 2 plus I. So here we have a fraction. Our numerator is a complex number. So the first part is a real part and the second part is an imaginary part. And our denominator is also a complex number. Real part, imaginary part. If we want to work this out, what we need to do is make the denominator be a real number. So basically get rid of the I value. So the first step is we need to write down the conjugate of the denominator. And it must be the denominator, never the numerator. So the conjugate of 2 plus I is going to be 2 minus I. To find the conjugate of any complex number, we change the sign of the I. So in this case, it was 2 plus I, so it became 2 minus I. If it had been 2 minus I, it would become 2 plus I. So the conjugate of 2 plus I is going to be 2 minus I. And this bar along the top represents the conjugate. Sometimes it's seen as Z with a bar on top. Okay, so step 2 is we're going to multiply the denominator by 2 minus I. Or we could have multiplied the numerator by 2 minus I. It doesn't matter which comes first and which comes second. Okay, but I'm going to multiply the denominator by 2 minus I. So the denominator was 2 plus I. And I'm multiplying it by its conjugate, which is 2 minus I. So I set up my double brackets, also known as binomial expansion. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to crack open the first egg. And then I'm going to bring over my 2 and have it stuck onto the second egg, which is 2 minus I. And then I'm going to bring over the plus I. And it's going to be stuck onto the second egg again, which again is 2 minus I. So what I have is 2 eggs. I crack open the first egg. I bring over the first part of the first egg and I stick on the second egg. And I bring over the second part of the first egg and again I stick on the second egg. So when I see binomial expansion, I want to think about it like it's 2 eggs and I crack open the first egg. So I'm going to multiply out my brackets then. 2 by 2 gives me 4. 2 by minus I gives me minus 2i. Plus I by 2 gives me plus 2i. And plus I by minus I gives me minus I squared. Now I see that minus 2i and plus 2i will cancel. And then I need to change the minus I squared into minus minus 1. Because I squared is equal to minus 1. So minus I squared gives me minus multiplied by minus 1. And a minus by minus is a plus, so I get plus 1. So that's where that plus 1 comes from. So minus I squared becomes plus 1. And I already brought down the 4. And 4 plus 1 gives me 5. So my new denominator is going to be 5. Okay, then step 3. I'm going to multiply the numerator by the conjugate of the denominator. So the numerator was 2 plus 11i. So I have that in my first set of brackets. And I'm multiplying that by the conjugate of 2 plus I, which is 2 minus I. So again, I'm going to crack open the first egg. And I'm going to bring the 2 over here and stick it onto the second egg. And bring the plus 11i over here and again stick it onto the second egg. So when I see 2 eggs, or binomial expansion as it's called, I'm going to crack open the first egg. The first part of the first egg comes over here and gets stuck onto the second egg, which we did not crack open. And the second part of the first egg comes over here and gets stuck onto the second egg again, which we did not crack open. Then we just multiply out the terms. 2 by 2 is 4. 2 by minus I is minus 2i. 11i by 2 is plus 22i. And 11i by minus I is minus 11i squared. Now we can simplify this line. Minus 2i plus 22i is going to give me plus 20i. And then minus 11i squared is going to be minus 11 multiplied by minus 1, which will give me plus 11. So minus 11i squared becomes minus 11 times minus 1, because we swapped the I squared for minus 1 with brackets around it. And minus 11 by minus 1 gives us plus 11. So the 4 comes down here. The minus 2i and the plus 22i give us plus 20i. And the minus 11i squared becomes plus 11. Then we can put the 4 and the 11 together to give us 15 and bring down the plus 20i. So our new numerator is going to be 15 plus 20i. So what we did was we have changed 2 plus 11i to be 15 plus 20i. And we've changed 2 plus I to be 5. So we're going to rewrite 2 plus 11i over 2 plus I as 15 plus 20i over 5. So this is step 4. Then we're going to break down our fraction, and we're going to take the real part over the denominator and then the imaginary part over the denominator. So 15 over 5 is going to be 15 divided by 5, which is going to be 3. Our real part will be 3. And 20i over 5 is going to be 20 divided by 5i, which is going to be 4i. So our imaginary part is 4i. So we wanted to have a complex number that was no longer a fraction, and we ended up with 3 plus 4i. And it's very important to remember that when dealing with division by a complex number, we multiply both the numerator and the denominator by the conjugate of the denominator. It must be the conjugate of the denominator, not the numerator. Our denominator in our question was 2 plus I, so the conjugate of that was going to be 2 minus I. So we multiplied the numerator by 2 minus I, and then we multiplied the denominator by 2 minus I, and then we simplified, and we ended up with 3 plus 4i.